I'm Emma Fife, and this is Reality Check, a series wherein we dive headlong into the mysteries of weird stuff in virtual worlds.
Today, we're discussing pets. No, not real ones. We're talking Pokémon, Tamagotchis, Neopets, and every petable dog from Zork 2 to Persona 3 Reload. Okay, not directly, but their presence is implied.
Essentially, everyone under age 40 has known what it is to care and shed real tears for a fake pet. And I'm here to investigate why.
The earliest game pets weren't the perfect floofy companions we always want to know whether or not we can pet today.
They were a lot simpler, and you couldn't really pet them because in their earliest iteration, virtual pets were cursor mods and screensavers.
The first of these was Neko, developed for Japanese PCs and ported to Macintosh in 1989. Neko was an animated cat that chased your cursor. If the cursor stopped moving, it got bored and fell asleep.
And honestly, that's an impressively realistic approximation of a cat.
In 1995, Pets was unleashed on PC. The game had two different versions, one for dogs and one for cats, and tasked players with caring for some of, if I may be frank, the ugliest little freaks I've ever seen in my life. Pets owners could throw toys to their nightmare fuel, feed their nightmare fuel, even train their nightmare fuel to do tricks.
Cute. But if you go even further back into the history of how pets in gaming came to be, nightmare fuel was pretty much the modus operandi from the jump.
The concept of befriending a beast arose from JRPGs like 1987's digital devil story Shin Megami Tensei, in which players could persuade demon enemies to join them in battle, or 1992's Dragon Quest V, which had a monster taming mechanic. 1996 saw the rise of the so-called virtual pet. First with the Tamagotchi, then in 1997 with Giga Pets. In spite of the seemingly infinite licensing deals that Giga Pets took on, the virtual pets fad was tragically short-lived, with many a Tamagotchi meeting an untimely demise amidst a postage stamp-sized screen filled with digital droppings by the end of 1998.
Because as some of us millennials may remember, a new challenger entered the arena right around the same time. And if you want to talk nightmare fuel, whoo boy, this thing is the nightmare fueliest.
Yes, of course, I am talking about Furby. Tiger Electronics took all that sweet licensing money from Giga Pets and summoned a being from hell itself, a ghoulish owl hamster that could gradually learn one of up to 24 languages depending on the language of the owner. This, cute little concoction of fake fur and plastic, complete with an infrared sensor that allowed it to communicate with others of its kind, was the must-have toy of the 1998 holiday season.
Also, did you know that they still make these? And this is way less creepy. Who knew that giving it the Lisa Frank treatment would make it more lively? I don't know, is that the word I'm looking for? Then pets made the leap to the World Wide Web.
Neopets launched in 1999 and allowed players to create and care for pets in the magical land of Neopia, where pets cannot die but can look so sad if you forget to feed them their daily slice of the giant omelet. The Neopets were totally customizable, could interact with items, and even have pets of their own, called Pet Pets. Neopets was highly compelling, with a now reliable formula for success that can be seen in games like Animal Crossing. There was no set objective, no lasting terrible consequences, a house you could decorate to your heart's content.
Oh yeah, and there was also a battle dome, which of course brings us to a different kind of pet entirely.
Pokémon made their debut in Japan with Pokémon Red and Green in 1996. The franchise was the brainchild of creator Satoshi Tajiri, inspired by his love of catching bugs and other small creatures while growing up in Machida, a suburb of Tokyo. Thanks to some smart marketing in a couple of Japanese magazines, including launching a companion ongoing manga series the day after the game's launch, and a postcard writing contest for a chance to obtain the mysterious 151st Pokémon Mew, Pocket Monsters was a success, despite its release near the end of the Game Boy's life cycle.
All this is to say that one way or another, pretty much everyone born after 1985 has experienced loving a pet that isn't real. So where does this come from? When the Tamagotchi craze swept the nation, it was the first time that there was widespread awareness of human beings developing emotional attachments to machines, rather than, real-life pets. Now, we all know real-life pets are great. According to a 2015 article in the National Journal of Medicine, over half the people in Western society share their lives with a pet, making them the norm rather than the exception.
The article goes on to say that while pets may be used to compensate for a lack of social relationships, they also help to facilitate interaction conversation with humans because, well, you're much more likely to say hello to someone in passing who's walking a cute dog.
Or if you're me, just ignore the human entirely and only talk to the dog. And digital pets can offer similar benefits to the analog variety. Looking specifically at the examples of Tamagotchi and Pokémon, there's a fairly straightforward correlation there.
These were cool items to have, so owning them was a boon to your social status. In addition, Tamagotchis were a shared interest, an immediate source of conversation.
There's no greater bond than two people commiserating about how much Tamagotchi poop they have to clean up.
Or stressing over the impending death of their painstakingly raised little alien buddies after being confiscated by their math teacher who thought they were done with this after the decline of Pogs. Pokémon took this a step further, with the game literally forcing you to interact with other Pokémon players and trade via link cable. Long before the advent of online gaming, if you wanted to obtain certain Pokémon or get certain evolutions that were triggered by a trade, well, you needed to make a friend. And of course, there was the summer of Pokémon GO, when a shared interest in Pokémon got a bunch of people to walk around outside and say hi to each other.
I talked to neighbors I'd never spoken to before so that I could direct them toward an Onyx I'd found around the corner from my apartment, and vice versa. In addition to the actual human social interaction element, these faux pets also offer the opportunity for pet ownership and its benefits in situations wherein it would otherwise be impossible.
In 2004, the world saw the commercial release of Paro, the robotic baby harp seal. This guy is the cutest Class 2 medical device on the market, although to be fair, its competitors are catheters, contact lenses, and pregnancy test kits. It's designed to be used as an alternative to animal-assisted therapy for hospital patients and nursing home residents who may be sensitive to the various allergens real pets produce like it's their job. Look at this. Dander galore. Paro was designed to be an animal with whom most patients would have no first-hand experience, so they wouldn't have expectations of it to behave a certain way and then experience disappointment when it inevitably falls short.
A robot dog will always let you down, but Paro? Nah, Paro is forever. Not to start beef with my parents in a YouTube video, but they're not pet people, and as a result, I was never able to have a real furry friend as a kid. However, I had a pretty great substitute.
It was a Tamagotchi knockoff called Dinky Dino, which I obviously hid under my desk at school. I was an advanced underdesk reader/note passer because I loved the little guy, and I was not going to get him confiscated.
The phenomenon of forming a real emotional attachment to a piece of machinery was so novel in 1996 that it spurred many to adopt the term Tamagotchi Effect to refer to it.
In the winter 2017 edition of the iJournal, author Laura Lawton explains that, according to clinical psychologist Neil Frood, it's actually an offshoot of animism, aka the human tendency to attribute life and consciousness to inanimate objects, which in turn creates an emotional attachment between the user and object. Even though the Tamagotchi is physically very different from live pets, it still delivered the right amount of animism to facilitate its user's imagination and emotional response.
Tamagotchi provided the right amount of response to decision made by the owner that the emotional response was a natural byproduct.
In the Pokémon games, there's a similar sense of pride inspired in the user by proper care. In the case of digital pets, that pride results from seeing it become healthy and grow into the best version of itself, living out its maximum lifespan of 25-ish days. For Pokémon, the pride stems from raising a balanced team that can overcome any challenge thrown your way. It's curating your use of TMs and HMs to increase your team's versatility and ability to traverse the world with ease. Nintendogs, the 2005 Nintendo DS real-time pet simulator, falls somewhere between the two, allowing for greater levels of interactivity than Tamagotchi,
but less plot and gym leaders and borderline cockfighting than Pokémon.
Fun fact, Nintendogs is the second best-selling Nintendo DS title of all time after New Super Mario Bros. All I'm saying is, don't discount the power of cute animals. Nintendo sure doesn't. If you didn't spend at least 80 hours of your life in 2020 playing Animal Crossing New Horizons, yes you did, you're lying.
But why do we keep coming back to virtual pets? A 2021 Wired article by Chelsea Leah, From Tamagotchi to Nintendogs, Why People Love Digital Pets, examines just that.
In the article, Leah observes the advent of virtual companions that arise with each new technological advance, such as the Touch Bar pet that quickly followed Apple's introduction of the Touch Bar standard to their laptops. She also examines our ever-present desire to pet the dog in games and spoke to Twitter user Tristan Cooper, who runs the popular account Can You Pet the Dog? Cooper says, I think people who like to pet video game dogs do so with a range of perspectives. Some players will see it as a nice break from increasingly complex and demanding standards of modern AAA games. Some players will see it as a way to reconnect with a cherished childhood pet that is passed on. Some players just like cute animals.
It's me. I'm some players.
There's a positive feedback loop associated with positive animal interactions, which is to say, yes, I allocated precious food resources to feeding all the cats and dogs roaming around the monastery and Fire Emblem 3 houses, even though I often got nothing in return.
Being able to interact with those animals, which you can too with the Expansion Pass Wave 3 DLC, was reward enough. Receiving the occasional high-level smithing material was just an added bonus, not a primary motivation.
Petting the dog may be a gimmick to get a massive Twitter account to share your game, but the science behind the positive feedback associated with animal interaction makes it an easy win, and one that I personally hope devs never stop doing.
Let's roll it back and dig deeper into the organ that makes us feel things like pride, connection, and joy when we interact with animals, be they real or electronic. The brain.
In a 2021 Vox article entitled "This Is Your Brain on Obsession: What the Tiny Tamagotchi Can Teach Us All," author Lexi Pandel examines the chemical reactions that take place in the brain when they're introduced to any new source of stimuli, which initially manifests in the form of curiosity.
This is inherently human. See, you may have noticed or wondered why human babies are born completely helpless. They're effectively immobile, unable to feed themselves, and have no innate sense of how to survive in their own environment.
What benefit does this give us as a species? Pandel quotes psychologist Paul Sylvia, who explains, "You can be born knowing how to take care of yourself, or you can be born knowing how to learn. So while plenty of other living things react to new stimuli, humans seek to understand them."
Huh. I guess that's like the whole thesis of what the show is about. But what really drives humans to learn new things is the reward system that comes with it. And that originates largely with a neurotransmitter, dopamine. Light dope. You want this? You want that? Okay, I'm not a scientist, but let me do my best to explain how it works.
There's a nerve tract in the middle part of our brain called the ventral tegmental area, or VTA, and another part on the other side of the middle brain called the nucleus accumbens. The VTA talks to the nucleus accumbens and says, "Hey, something good or interesting or stimulating is happening." Then the nucleus accumbens goes, "Oh, tight," and releases dopamine, which is regulated by the VTA so it doesn't go crazy with all the treats. This is then communicated to the learning part of the brain, the hippocampus, so it remembers, "Oh, that was rad," and you learn to repeat that behavior.
And while once upon a time we thought dopamine was all about hedonistic reward, in 1998, the year of the decline of the Tamagotchi and meteoric rise of Pokémon in the West,
a study was conducted by University of Michigan's Department of Psychology. This study involved breeding rats with significantly reduced levels of dopamine production, resulting in rats who enjoyed food when it was given to them but didn't actively seek it out.
The conclusion the scientists reached was that dopamine actually plays a critical role in motivation. In Pandel's article, she goes on to explain that constant change causes increases in fascination.
In the 1950s, psychologist B.F. Skinner conducted a series of experiments on rats where the test subjects would randomly receive food rewards after hitting a button a random number of times. And in many ways, we're not so different from those little rats with the buttons.
I mean, that's why some of us spend real American dollars or Japanese yen or European euros, et cetera, and things like gacha games. The unpredictability of it makes us more inclined to continue pursuing it.
Similarly, it ties into the fascination with opening Pokémon GO anytime you go somewhere new, just to see what kind of Pokémon that area has. In a weird way, when people were out there trying to catch them all, they were existing in the outside world, but not necessarily engaging with it.
Context, I was a tour guide at Universal for 8 years, and trust me, during the heyday of Pokémon GO, most people were not at the Waterworld show to marvel at how 15 minutes worth of truly awesome stunts could make a fabulous show out of a boring Kevin Costner movie. They were trying to catch Staryu.
The same principle applies to games like Animal Crossing. No, you're not caring for your neighbors like you would care for your Pokémon, but that unpredictability factor still remains. What new neighbor is going to move in when I have a new/vacant house on my island? Who's at my campground? Which neighbor is going to schedule time to hang out with me that I'm going to reschedule my entire real life around?
And when the dopamine production levels out, that's when the fascination ends. It's inevitable. It hits you when you're tired of tending to your Tamagotchi's needs every 30 minutes, or when you've defeated the Elite Four and decide, you know what?
I have my one team who I've raised to be the very best, like no one ever was. So maybe I don't want to catch them all. Or when the novelty of petting every baby chocobo who leads you to set up a fast travel point wears off, which it never will. Oh my god, they are so cute. I will pet every single one of them. Thank you, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, for this blessing. Yes, maybe you feel a little sad losing out on the social interaction that once came with coming across other people hunting Pokemon, but without that sweet dopamine hit, you actually struggle to motivate yourself to do it.
Your brain remembers what it once felt like, so you could do it, but why, when you could instead solve mysteries alongside Pikachu in a detective costume who's also kind of your dad? Detective Pikachu's weird. So, what have we learned today? Well, we've learned that my parents didn't love me enough to get me a real Tamagotchi. Actually, that's not true. They were very difficult to find, and the Dinky Dino slapped. Okay, you can fight me. Dinky Dino was awesome. More importantly, we've discovered that loving variability drives curiosity and unpredictability drives obsession, which has literally led to the survival of the human race.
Our desire to understand cause and response is what drives us to care for others, for our pets, for our stuff.
We're neurologically programmed to respond to feedback, and when that feedback is positive,
As it was when we first made fire and felt warmth, or pet the earliest domesticated wolf over 30,000 years ago, we develop a beneficial habit of remembering that feeling and continuing to seek that positive feedback loop. It's not all that different from our attachments to our phones, which provide us with communal recommendations, information whenever we have need of it,
phone numbers for people we love that we absolutely have not memorized the phone numbers of, directions, and yes, a bunch of cute digitally rendered cats who live in a charming garden paradise. Is it strange to have an emotional attachment to a thing that isn't real?
Did you cry when you found the dead wolf in Resident Evil 4 Remake and thought the devs had removed the ability to save him, or are you a monster?
The answer is no, by the way, because again, it's central to the way the brain operates. Now, whether or not it's entirely healthy, that, my friends, is a completely different video and contains way less cute stuff. I thought we had a magnifying glass, but we don't. So I improvised. I think this is a Stargate, and I